All right, this is the best show available on the internet in this price range in school and community safety. So, hey, everybody, it is your good friend, Dr. David Proden from the North Star Recording Studio, where, believe it or not, it is 78 degrees with about 70% humidity. And of course, down here in the studio, my assistant did not turn down the audio on the speakers. So, that is one demerit point, but we do have the lights up and working today. And you know, it always is better when the batteries are charged. So today, our guest is Morgan Rogue from Rogue Preparedness. Now, this is pretty fascinating stuff for the Safety Doc podcast because we talk about school safety, we talk about personal community safety. We're going to really get into personal and community safety at a time when we need to bring this to the forefront. I've been a fan of Morgan's work, her blog post, her YouTube videos, all of the content that she puts out. I feel it resonates. It finds a point of interest for the reader, whether that's me, whether it's somebody that's younger, somebody that's a parent. It has what I call this kind of easement property to it. Everybody who reads it takes something out of it that can relate to it. So, hey, a big thank you and a welcome to all of the people over in the chat and the people syndicated out of Los Angeles, California, the 405media.com coming on live with the show. Thank you so much. It is your good friend, Dr. David Proden. So, hey, Morgan lives on 40 acres of land in the southern United States. So, with her husband, 2 daughters and 2 dogs, she is the owner and founder of Rogue Preparedness, a website dedicated to emergency preparedness and survival skills. Morgan has published extensively in crisis preparedness and response, including Preparedness for Busy People and Prepare and Survive Economic Crisis. That's a primer to help people understand bartering valuable items. You know, what's valuable, what holds value, and also controlling fear. She has an outstanding YouTube channel. I'll link all of that out when I do the blog post that corresponds to the show. Many of her episodes are 10 minutes or less, and they're very different topics. So she recently had a show on how you could plant rice, in outside of your house and in containers, the soil, put down, and the whole process. It's just fascinating stuff. So she also addressed, a very contemporary issue. What does it mean for all of us when the police are being disbanded in Seattle? And what is the history of policing? And just to have these discussions, I really appreciate it. So I am going to cite some of Morgan's work in my upcoming book, The Velocity of Information. And I made this statement on Twitter. I said, her contributions to safety stand out as curated and calibrated with easements for people new to preparedness as well as experienced preppers. So enough about me and my intro. Morgan, welcome to the Safety Doc podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a really good intro. Thank you very much.
So yeah, it's it's a summary. I mean, there are so many things that you've done in the preparedness communities. So tell us about what brought you to preparedness. Was there like this epiphany moment? Was it gradual? I think I read you've been identifying yourself as someone really working in preparedness for about a decade. How did that all get started?
So my story is not big or exciting or anything, but it's, I think anything that can wake somebody up, even if it's something so small, is important. So mine was a little over 10 years ago. I had moved to Texas. And in Texas, I guess, when you just breathe wrong, the power goes out, right?
Okay.
And so, the power goes out just a lot for a variety of reasons. It's very easy. And so the power, I had experienced my first power outage since moving there. And my phone had like no charge on it at all. I had like this BlackBerry or whatever.
Sure.
No charge on it. And like, I don't know who I thought I was. It was so important that well, who's going to call me? How am I going to text people? What am I going to do? But I was like, how am I going to keep my phone charged? Right. And that really got me thinking. I'm like, there's got to be other ways to charge your phone, or just alternative, energies. Like at the time, solar was around, I believe, but still very expensive and almost inaccessible to the majority of people.
Okay.
Just a little over 10 years ago, I mean, solar has only become more accessible to people in the past several years, more affordable and stuff. Anyway, and so, those little camping solar panels, I don't know if they were around that much, but anyway, so yeah, that started getting me thinking, and I didn't seriously really get into it until I met my husband about a year or so later. But I kind of had gone in and researched a little bit about how I could make that happen, charge my phone, in a blackout.
So I'm going to take, I have right here, this is a charging brick. So I got this one back in early March. Yeah, actually, it was one of the last things that got delivered on time by Amazon. Yeah. So yeah, this is as I call it. It looks like a flattened stick of dynamite. This would be hard to get through TSA. I'm pretty sure on that, but it works great because and I actually got another one in blue this time, but for the purpose, right? Because what if the power goes out? Or I thought, what if we needed to be mobile? I mean, what if suddenly we had to go somewhere, or leave our vehicle, something medically related? Who knows? But here, at least, yeah, I would be able to extend the amount of time that I'd have access to my communication, system. So it was just as simple as that. So yeah, I was kind of thinking along that line, maybe like 9-10 years later than you were on that. But so
they didn't really have those around 10 years ago either. And again, I think if they did, it was very expensive. So
yeah, that's a good point, because I bought a smaller one. I do long bike treks and like for a day, and I bought a smaller one, which was very expensive back maybe 5-6 years ago. And this one was significantly less, much more affordable, and people are more familiar with them too. Like if you take them through like checkpoints and things, are like, oh, that's a battery pack. You've seen those before. I'm not trying to get anything through here that would be dangerous. So I was going through a number of your videos, and I wanted to bring awareness, and again I'll bring this into the blog post. But you on July 14th, episode 120, how misinformation spreads and what we can do about it. So I want to touch on that a little bit later. On July 8th, you wrote 12 or more of the most popular items during the pandemic. So we'll touch on those today. And you made a blog post recently. It was about outdoor activities for kids, and basically, like parks are closed, places that families usually might take kids, theaters, things like that, closed down. It actually like 45 items that you recommended, which were all spot on. And the 45th item, Morgan, on that list was, have your kids draw a map of their neighborhood, of around the house, of if you go to a park or something like that. And that is such outstanding advice, right? It's situational awareness, it's memory recall, it's taking information and putting it down into some format that then you can retrieve from. And there's so much that can be pulled out of that outside of a pandemic, outside of whatever, just teaching kids how to identify what's happening in their environment. And then also, hey, that's different. Like that wasn't there yesterday when I made this map. That's there today, or something is missing. And it's amazing. We see these videos of kids, of just people walking down the road with their cell phone, and they walk right into a sign or walk right out in the traffic. They just don't have this awareness. But I really thought that was a phenomenal post, because I'm a parent, and I would suggest that post to any parent. I mean, again, I'll link that out. So just thank you for, again, the content that you create.
Thank you. That was a glowing recommendation. Appreciate it. By the way, I just want to let you know, if I'm swatting at anything, it's not the imaginary people around me. So,
right.
There's a bunch of flies around here. I'm trying to keep them off. So.
Morgan's like, okay, we weren't going to talk about this, but this is a haunted cabin that she's in right now. So it's been on Travel Channel. Actually, we do have somebody in the chat, Brian Bowden, who has been on the Travel Channel for one of his ghost shows. So he is in the chat right now out of the Bronx. Sorry, Brian, I don't remember the title of the show that you have. But yes, so if he might start messaging and say, look, look behind you, look at the orbs, things like that. It's all friendly stuff, though, Morgan. Usually it's friendly. You don't have to worry about it. But
I'm actually really into all that ghost stuff and the supernatural. Not like really into it, but I think it's fascinating. I'm like really into supernatural shows and stuff like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a lot of friends who investigate supernatural, and they are tuned in to situational awareness and understanding their environment and getting measurements. And I really appreciate that. I mean, I learn so much from their work. So a shout out just to the chat room. Joel Dolio out of Michigan, welcome. Bullrush, welcome. John Steele out of Seattle, Washington, welcome. Bacon, Inglewood, our good friend, welcome. And Brian Bowden, welcome from the Bronx. Finally having power back to the Bronx. Brian, I appreciate that they got you juiced up. So Morgan, the law of scarcity is in play, and I'm looking over here because I have a couple monitors in play, but the law of scarcity. So basically, a disaster hits, like a hurricane, a wildfire, let's say economic collapse, but something hits fast. People are scrambling for food, for water, toilet paper, stuff like this. Like we saw this with the coronavirus shutdown in the middle of March. People going to stores, just clearing out these types of things from the aisles. From your observations, what were the greatest demands kind of in March and April? What were things that you were seeing? You're more trained to see this than the typical person. Also, what was your network, your friends? What were they telling you? Maybe what were some of the obvious things, some of the things that weren't so obvious?
Well, I tell you what, I think we all knew about the toilet paper crisis. I think that was really obvious, but that was something that literally no one expected. It was kind of like, toilet paper? Like, are we eating toilet paper? Is this a virus that makes us go to the bathroom a lot? Like, what is happening here? And so, like, it was very, very confusing for a lot of us. And what was really, really interesting about this pandemic is that it really went in phases about what people wanted. So they wanted the toilet paper. That was first. And the psychology behind it was, I guess, a lot of people were saying that the toilet paper is comfort. Toilet paper is the thing that gives people comfort, I guess. And so
right.
It was fascinating stuff. But so toilet paper, and then after the toilet paper came the food, and then the water, and then the cleaning stuff after that.
Okay.
It was all kind of intertwined together, but I mean, it was really, it kind of went in phases. And so after people were clearing the shelves and stuff like that, everybody was getting into learning things like, trying to be a little more self-sufficient, like baking and, sewing. Oh my gosh, sewing. Everybody was getting into the sewing, the mass sewing game. And so sewing machines were surprisingly out of stock for a very long time, months. I was trying to find a sewing machine. I had sold one since before we moved into the RV, and I was like, whatever. I'm not gonna carry this big old heavy sewing machine, and I didn't store it either. I'm just kicking myself for that. Anyway, I eventually found one, a really nice used one. But anyway, my point is, sewing machines was never something that I ever thought a pandemic of any kind would create a shortage of. And then, so again, people were realizing a little more self-sufficiency. So they got into canning, they got into dehydrating, they got Berkey, water Berkey systems were really scarce. I think they still are. Obviously, all the freeze-dried companies weren't prepared for this type of onslaught that they were getting, because everybody realized that nobody was prepared, that they weren't prepared. They had no food, no nothing, and they didn't want just the canned stuff. They wanted that freeze-dried stuff. So then it went to freezer food items, and freezers were really heavily out of stock. They still are. We magically stumbled upon a freezer like a month ago, and we didn't even have the solar setup to set it up yet, but we were like, we got to get this. And so we got it, and thank goodness we did, because it's still been very, very difficult to find. I actually see on the screen here, ammo has been really hard to find. So what's happening this year is it's not just a pandemic, it's also an election year. And so election years cause a lot of ammo shortages and gun shortages. And ammo specifically, like, just let's see, it was 2 months ago, we got some wholesale, and even at that time it was getting really, really bad. And now it's like almost impossible to find anything, especially the really popular, 9mm, 223, 5.56, all that, very, very difficult to find. And so yeah, just got to shoot less, unfortunately. Do more dry fire. And then, yeah, I see on the screen here, Lysol's out of stock. Yeah, I mean, those Lysol wipes are out of stock, but I actually have been able to find alcohol a little bit more. It's the 70%, but 70% is just a little more diluted. Alcohol is something that is also really, really hard to find, because everybody realized that they could make their own hand sanitizer, and they could make their own, type of disinfecting wipes and things like that. And so, that's been still out of stock a lot. But toilet paper has come back, and I think hand sanitizer has 100% come back. And now I think it's, well, in some places, and I'll get to this in just a second, but in my area, it's definitely come back with a fiery passion. I mean, now I think it's an overabundance of hand sanitizer, and it's an overabundance of masks. And I do masks as it's coverings, the face coverings. Now they're everywhere. And so one thing that I've been seeing really, really fascinating of, is so different in every part of the US. The shortages that I'm hearing from a lot of people, some people are saying lumber is out of stock in some places. In my area, I haven't seen any shortages at all, but they're saying in their area, they're seeing not only shortages, but increase of prices. And then in some other places, I've also heard that, there's been a shortage of toilet paper again, but in my area, there's plenty of toilet paper. So this is also something that's been very, very interesting to see. And it's not necessarily correlating with, natural disaster prone areas either, because like the hurricane that just went through, it's going through. And so it's not necessarily correlating with those specific areas either. Like the lumber shortage, this did not come from, an Eastern, state. It didn't come from Florida. It didn't come from somewhere like that. So, normally during any natural disaster, you're going to see huge increases of people rushing to the stores and getting all this stuff. So now we have the triple whammy. We have the politics, we have the pandemic, we have natural disasters that are still coming, because natural disasters don't care about pandemics. And so, yeah, we just have a whole wide variety of things that are happening right now. So it's a really wide variety of shortages.
Sounds scary. Plus ghost, on top of this, right? So
yeah,
one more. So you're talking about the sewing machine, right? So it's a big item, right? Physically big, right? So to try to locate this, obviously to buy something off of eBay or whatever, I mean, it's gonna be crazy shipping and stuff like that. But so when you realized you wanted to get a sewing machine, I guess, where were you going? Was it like Facebook Marketplace? Was it Craigslist? Were there people in your, I guess, network, which we'll talk about later, of how you've developed your own member network? How are you trying to find a sewing machine, and then, the needles, the thread, the accessories to go with it?
So surprisingly, a lot of the accessories, well, let me step back a little bit. I was lucky enough to find the accessories before they also went out of stock, because as I'm sure you might put two and two together, with sewing machines going out of stock, so does fabric, all the accessories and all those things, like you're just saying, definitely went way out of stock. But I was going on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and nobody was even selling used. And if they were selling used, I'm dragonfly in here now. Now, if they were selling used, it was going just like that. I mean, they were just gone. And so finally, I mean, it was just the stars aligned, and finally I found it. But yeah, I was constantly searching. Something else that's very interesting, the shortage.
Yeah.
Playgrounds, any type of pools, any type of, basically a lot of kid stuff like trampolines, they were out of stock as well. Bikes, I saw in my store one day that the entire aisle of bikes from Walmart gone. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Wow.
And I got to thinking, what is this? What's going on with this pandemic? And then I was like, well, all the kids are at home, all the parents are at home, everybody's at home, so all the parks are closed, all the museums are closed, all these places are closed in which you might take your child to go do these things, but now your child's at home and doing all these things. So it was a really weird dynamic, because I was just trying to find a playground for my daughter's 4th birthday, and it took us like 2 months. And at one point I was even like, whatever, I can't find a used one, fine, I'll just go buy a $3,000 one. You couldn't even buy that either. You couldn't even, they were out of stock. Everybody was out of stock.
So when did you start to see that, like with the playground equipment? Can you is there a timeline you can put this to? Like, say the bike started like in May and the playground started like in May. Or I guess, when do these things really start to manifest? And I have a reason for this as we get into this a little bit, because what you're describing, I wasn't aware of all of these things. I mean, I was aware of a number because you've written about them and my network, but yeah, like when did you experience the playground equipment? When did you go through like Walmart and be like, bikes are gone, they're missing, they're gone, they're sold out? This last week when I was here, there were still bikes are gone.
Bikes were a month ago, so in July, and then I want to say playgrounds were in May, maybe end of April we started looking, and in May it was really becoming annoying. So I want to say around May.
Wow. So what you're talking about, Morgan, is it's a concept called crowd-in theory. So the law of scarcity applies when, and I'm saying this as somebody who researches, chaos. It's what I do. I'm a chaos researcher, right? So, so law of scarcity, for example, you said the hurricane, that came through. People know, got to get wood, plywood, got to board things up, got to get enough food supplies for number of days, water, things like that. But they know it's going to end, right? Like, this will pass, this will end, we'll get back to some similarity. Now, crowd-in theory is different, though. Once you get to 90 days, now this is kind of a rough estimate on a civilian population, but there are many indicators that indicate this is authentic. Once you get to 90 days in a civilian population of a chaos event, which is pretty rare. Like the last time that's happened was Chernobyl in 1986, affected multiple countries, of course, the Ukraine, parts of Russia, Sweden, so forth, even over in the United States, as radiation was coming over. But at 90 days, people start to change their behavior, and they're no longer looking at survival items. They start buying decorative trinkets, interior paint, like that's selling 10 times right now what it's normally sold in any month, dating back like 70 years. Comfort items, blankets, puzzles, things like that, through the roof, right? Selling. So it's kind of weird, because if you think I have $100, and of this $100, do I go out and buy survival things like, food, water, things I absolutely need, or do I take $30 of that and buy myself a DVD or, some trinket or a video game or something like that? So when people get into this crowd-in mentality, the purchases start to change. Like when you're talking about like bikes being off the racks, like there are no bikes. That's a great indicator of crowd-in theory. People are like, okay, I'm going to need this for transportation. The roads I live in a city, and now they're not doing as much public transportation, right? Because of the coronavirus, they only let so many people on a bus, and I've got to be able to get around. And what if there's protests and streets get shut down? I need to be able to do that. Plus fitness and all of these other things. So it's fascinating right now because we are in a point of time because of the pandemic and then also civil unrest. We've crossed 100 days, and I've been working with some of the top chaos folks in the world even today, and we've never been here in the last 70 years as a Western society. Um, so we're observing this in the moment, all these little indicators, right, of what you've said. Um, so what else are some things that you're seeing or people are telling you about, and you're like, that's weird. Like, why would people be buying this? Or what a new skill? Okay, learning to garden. That makes sense. That's a crowd in mentality, right? That is, and that's actually a good thing, right? You want to, if you learn to do that, you'll probably carry that over in the next few years. It'll just,
Mhm.
but what are these things, again, that you're seeing, other people are seeing that we're just missing? We're just not thinking about it. Be like, oh yeah, that is. People are starting to do that. People are starting to do this. The people are. Um, anything else come to mind? Anything people telling you? Anything they're like, this is really hard to get, and I don't know why. I can't get timers anymore. The only place they have them is Safety Doc Podcast. I'm not selling this one either. It's not for sale.
um, I actually do want to comment on actually something that you said was that um, we're getting past that 90 days of people. I think people are getting, okay, so not only have we never experienced this in our lifetime, but we also have never experienced something like this with the internet, with the ability to have all of these things at our fingertips, the ability to have Amazon and the ability to have video games and YouTube and, this podcast and all of these things that are still here to entertain us, but people are still getting restless and they're still trying to find these new ways to fill their time, and they're getting bored and they're getting all these things are happening. And so I think one of the biggest things that's happening right now is I don't know how else to put this besides just scarcity of the mind in which the fact that people with so much unemployment and so much time on people's hands, and just with the chaos, with the internet fueling people's mind in
Right.
the sense of good and bad, because the internet is a great place to learn information and to meet new people and to join great communities, but it's also a great place to fuel that hatred and anxiety and all this stuff. And so
Right.
there's so much going on right now with people's headspace, and so it's creating all this tension and chaos outside, in the world. And so, I mean, that's, I think, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like
Well, let's get into that. So people, so you're observing the finite voltage effect, right? You're observing some people hit this point of they call it mental collapse, right? Of kind of, and there's this thing called cyberchondria, where basically you go on the internet and if you start searching of economic collapse, coronavirus symptoms and whatever, pretty soon every search you do is focused on that, and you're 4 or 5 hours into it, and it just overwhelms you. You just compound it. And I know a lot of people told me, like, there's nights they don't even sleep, like they just continue searching, and pretty soon the sun is up. How people who are reaching out to you for the first time, who've never found you until suddenly they've done the searches and they're like, oh my goodness, there's this channel out there, there's this website, I'm going to bring up your website here and share it on the screen. Are people panicked when they're contacting you? What are they asking you? What are they saying? Morgan, I'm so glad I found you. Can you help me with this? Or here's what I'm doing. Or they just want to tell you what they're experiencing and get some response from you. What are you sensing from your audience that maybe you didn't sense, 3-4 months ago?
I am definitely sensing a lot more anxiety and fear just in general. One of my most popular videos right now that I did like a year ago was it's called the best canned food items to store, and it's by far one of my most popular one of my most popular YouTube videos right now, because everybody is looking for answers. And I've seen a lot of increase in a lot of my videos, that have to deal with civil unrest and things like that.
Right.
Because they're just looking for answers and they don't know how to deal with any of this. So a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And more specifically, people are wanting more defense. I get a lot of questions about firearms and ammo and concealed carry and training and all this. And I think it's fantastic that people are reaching out to actually want to do that, because it's always, self-defense, especially with a firearm, is always very taboo. It's like,
Right. Right.
So a lot of people are reaching out to me about that. And but in general, people are just kind of at a loss still. That they've had all this time, they have all this information, but they just still don't really know what's going on. And I don't think that there's an answer for anything, because nobody knows where this is going. I mean, 2 weeks to curve the, to flatten the curve has turned into months of never ending and second lockdowns that haven't even ended. And a society that is spiraling into something that we've never seen before. So it's creating a lot more anxiety and fear in people.
I have a friend in Los Angeles, Morgan, and she said, I don't have change to do my laundry. Like, I can't get change anywhere. I can't get quarters. So you go to a laundromat. There's no, the machine's not spitting out change. You go to the bank and you're like, here, take this $5 bill and can you give me quarters? It's like you're doing a holdup, right? Like, get out of here. It's crazy. Like, I mean, we wouldn't have thought about things like that. So, so I was bringing up some of your videos, giving an idea. How do you how do you stabilize people around you who maybe, whether it be family, extended family, friends, people in your network who are becoming very anxious and becoming very concerned that I guess either anxious, depressed, languishing, ready to give up, things like that, and help people balance, get a footing, get grounded again.
So firstly, what I do is I just talk to them. If somebody comes up to me and they're like, I'm feeling really anxious about this world going on, I understand that. I totally get that. What are we feeling anxious about exactly? We have to get to the root cause of the problem. Well, I'm afraid that people are going to come to my home. The protesters are going to come to the suburbs, or whatever the case may be. All right, we found something that we can work with. We found something that has a solution. Just having that anxiety and just having that fear with no focus and it just being there.
Oh, good point, Morgan.
I'm sorry?
No, good point.
Okay. Sorry. It's doing nothing. There's no focus, there's no action, there's no plan to move forward. And so this is how, people spiral, because they just focus so hard on the negative things that are happening in this world. Oh, these protests, the pandemic, all these things, and they're spiraling out of control because they feel out of control.
Right.
And there's a lot of things out of our control. In fact, most of those things in this world are out of our control, right?
Right.
There's very few things that are in our control, but you know what? There are actually quite a bit of things that are in our control. So, you can be better prepared. You can be better educated. You can be better informed. You can learn to control the feelings of fear and anxiety. And this sounds like very frou-frou, like I can't control my fear. We all have fear. And I'm no Tony Blauer. And if you haven't heard of Tony Blauer, you should really go look him up. He is amazing. He talks about knowing fear. And, no one's really ever talked about this, because it's always just like, well, you have fear, get over it, be fearless. Right. That's not the way to deal with this. It is right. Not the way nobody is fearless. And you're lying to yourself if you say that you are. We all have fears. And we all have anxiety about one thing or another. But it's how we acknowledge it. It's how we, and then it's how we use that fear to move forward, to figure out the action to take in order to get away from this fear, to limit the fear at least. And so, I mean, there's lots of things that I fear every day. I have 2 children that are running around the desert, that could get bit by a snake or this, that, or the other, but I have to control these emotions so that if these things ever do happen, I'm going to give you an example. The other day, something I never really expected, actually something I had thought of, but I just kind of put it out of my mind. I didn't have my kids sleep on a bunk beds. And my eldest, my 4-year-old, is on top. It's not very far from the ground. We're in an RV. We're not that tall. Anyway, and so it didn't have any railings, but she had slept in a bed for a long time. So I was like, she's probably fine, right? And she'd never fallen off the bed before, but that was a bigger bed. It was slightly bigger. It was a little different. And so anyway, she fell off the top of the bunk bed. And I just hear this thump, and I was like, I sit up and I'm like, the heck was that?
Right.
And so I want to stop right there. And most people at this stage, when they hear a sound that they don't recognize, they go into denial phase. Me, I hear a sound I don't recognize, and I go, what's that? What is that? I need to recognize that sound. What is that sound? Let's figure out this sound. Especially living out on 40 acres away from civilization, and like an hour to the nearest hospital, we had to be very aware of all these things. But I think everybody should never discount noises that you hear. But anyway, and so I got up and I was like, what was that sound? And all of a sudden, I get up and I start to go investigate, and I hear my daughter crying, and I was like, she was on the ground, bloody lip. But instead of freaking out and getting scared, oh gosh, what's going on? Literally all we did was we just action. We took care of her lip. We held her. We said, are you okay? All this, da, da, da. And that's it. And then after that was over, then the anxiety kind of kicked in, and I was like, what are we going to, tomorrow we're going to go put rails in. We're going to go get the wood to put
right.
in. I mean, it was taking that action so it would never happen again. But it's that fear of, what if something really bad happened to my daughter? She was fine. But instead of freaking out about it in that moment, you just simply kind of dive in and take action. So we all have that fear, and we all have anxiety, but we just have to just kind of, and it takes training. It really does. It's not like an instant, I'm just going to control my fear and be over with it. It's not. Right. Takes training every single day, and kids are really good to train you because they do crazy things all the time, and they upset you all the time, and they push your buttons all the time. And so it's they are really, really good training for that anxiety and controlling your emotions. And by controlling your emotions, you're controlling fear as part of that emotion, so anything that you can do to put yourself in that situation to kind of maybe feel fear a little bit so that you can learn to overcome it and take action and move forward, the better off you're going to be just in really any situation, and especially natural disasters and pandemics and ghosts and whatever.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, bring yourself to outside of your similarity zone and experience new things that are uncomfortable, and how to negotiate, with those. As you said, you've got to kind of test fear. So a few things I want to touch on, and a few things in the chat which are great. Joshua, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. Morgan, you're talking about, you heard the noise and you made the choice then. So you're in the RV, instead of freaking out, you're investigating. What is it? I'm trying, to figure it out. And again, people, that's a choice. That's you condition yourself to investigate, to understand versus to fear and either, retreat from things. So I wrote about it in my book, which is here for people, right? This hard copy, School of Airs. I had the benefit of working with the New York City Department of Planning when I wrote the book, and learning about people in the Twin Towers, right? On 9/11, the attacks on the Twin Towers. And what was a fascinating element that stood out from that, and also the work of author Amanda Ripley. But when the Twin Towers were struck, a number of people just didn't acknowledge that what happened really happened, right? They stayed at their desk and they're like, okay, something happened, but I need to save this document, right? I've got to save this. This is back in 2000, takes a little while, the 3.5 disc, inch floppy. I've got to do this. I got to get this before I exit. Like, I've got to shut all of these systems down. And they didn't either acknowledge or interface with what was happening. So it's part of that too, that you have to be aware, you have to investigate what's happening, and then you have to act. A lot of people, it's like power outages, right? If the power goes out, well, if the power goes out, like, the odds are in 10 minutes it'll be back on. Now, we have people in the chat room. We have Joe in Detroit. We have Brian in the Bronx, where power's been out for like 3 days in the last few weeks. So then you have to adjust completely differently. You're out of your similarity. What do you do then when, this isn't part of my life? How do I adjust and get through this versus denying? And I'm not going to do anything here because in 5 minutes it's going to come back on. And you keep telling yourself that for 20 hours. You mentioned, and you wrote about this too, in a tweet today, and it was fitness, right? So think about fitness. Anybody can take measures to become more fit. And when you're more fit, when you feel better, you physically feel better, in a crisis situation, you can get yourself to safety more efficiently. If you're fit, you can help rescue others. If you're more fit and you yourself are, it's easier to rescue you. I mean, if you're more fit, don't have extra weight, if you can participate in your rescue. Drew Bay was a guest, on my show. He spoke about that at length. But right there, I mean, that's something people are like, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. And it's like, how many of us take those steps in our daily life with us and our kids and our family members? Just fitness and activities and what we eat. So Joshua has a question. He's been waiting patiently. He's asking, are people asking you about growing their own food? I believe we're all too dependent upon grocery stores. So so what are people asking you, and what are you saying? Like, here's where to start with growing your own food. And it's maybe not rice.
Yeah, no, definitely not rice. Not a beginner's grower thing. Let's see. So I always suggest that people start out with really, but actually, yes, to answer your question, yes, a lot of people have been asking about that. But it's not just gardening. It's also like with their own eggs. Eggs was in huge shortage for a long time, and people got sick of it. And they decided to get their own chickens. A lot of people have gotten their own backyard chickens, just one or two or whatever they can get, if they can get it. And I think that's fantastic. And a lot of people are very anti it because they're like, well, you have to feed and take care of chickens. And I'm like, yeah, at some point we have to give people that buy chickens the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure that there are some terrible animal owners. There definitely are. But I think if you're already kind of in that prepping mindset and that self-sufficiency mindset, that you're going to take those steps and you're going to be okay with it. Taking care of a garden, I always suggest something easy, like starting with like sprouting foods, like sprouting beans or sprouting any type of stuff like that, or container gardening. Container gardening is really, really simple. Anybody can do it. You can live in an apartment. Even I'm actually doing a little container gardening in my greenhouse for certain things, and herbs, of course, always really, really easy to grow herbs. Nice small little plants, you could put them in a bright windowsill and they'll be good. And then there's little microgreens that you can do. There's actually microgreens like little microgreen lettuce and little microgreen, things like that, which are really, really easy. You can do that inside. They sell little kits that have like a little grow light on top and stuff like that. Super easy. There's all these little super easy things we can do. But a lot of people have definitely been going that route as well, which I think is fantastic.
Is it hard to get the seeds, or are those around, or how do you recommend people go about? Beans. We actually did that. Like that was one of the staples of the garden that we made this year. Beans. How do people go? Has that been in short supply, or has it been available?
Some people have said it's been in short supply, but I have not found any issues. I've searched, I've gotten seeds from Etsy, from seedsnow.com. I got it from, I'm forgetting.
Organs like in the mail from China. I'm like, don't plant those.
Not China.
Do not
Don't
plant
those seeds. No, I mean, yeah, they're coming through the mail. Most stores will stop selling it around now or next month, depending on your zone. Like my Home Depot and stuff like that still had lots of seeds. You know, the more expensive ones were there, but you know, if you want a garden, you'll spend a little more money. If there's no seeds, you're going to buy the seeds that are there, right? You know, they had like the really organic ones, you know, the really organic ones, not just organic, but really, really organic. Okay. So anyway, so there are still seeds available, but I think it's just kind of dependent on where you live and where you look online.
Okay.
I've been pretty successful online.
We have a question from Marty in the chat, and I think this is a terrific question, right? When does a prepper turn into a hoarder? He believes it's an easy line to cross. And now in watching, something that you do is you write down the date that you buy. For example, food items. Here's the date that I bought this. Here's the date that I put Tylenol in my bug out bags. So then you set alarms so you know a certain number of days around a calendar later, so you can cycle through things. So that's a good tip. But yeah, when have there been things when you're like, oh, we went over the top on this, or how do you help people negotiate? I guess the right amount to keep versus, oh my goodness, like you've just put up another storage unit and it's solely for this, and that's probably not really realistic. That's not where you should be putting your resources. I guess everyone's thinking maybe more is better, right? I've done that on the other side of this wall. We added another pantry, and that continues to expand and wondering how much further should I expand that. So how do you help people answer that question?
Yeah, I give a really vague answer because there's really no answer for that. Like, I can't tell you that, having 25 years worth of food, not just food that lasts 25 years, but, actually 25 years worth of food is too much. I can't tell you that. If you have the space and you have the money and you have the motivation, more power to you. It's not really my place or anybody else's place to tell you it's really too much. Now, I think it becomes a hoarding problem when it overtakes your life. Like, if you've seen those hoarding shows, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, like, it becomes so bad in which, you can't move, you can't live, your hygiene is taking a hit. I mean, that is a serious condition, and that's really, really serious. And I think a lot of preppers may feel that they're going overboard, but also at the same time, it's hard because we just want to be prepared, and we just, we always feel like it's never enough, because like with this pandemic is showing us months and months later, it's like, our economy is tanking, and we keep hearing of food shortages, and we keep hearing of all these things, and it's really scary. And so I think there's no really good way to answer that. If somebody's coming into your home and being like, hey, can I sit where those cans of food are? And you go, no,
Right.
That's probably need to scale back a little bit and, either find a better place for that stuff, or, find some other ways to acquire food, outside of just stocking food, like, growing your own garden, or, looking into all the other sources of food, small game hunting and stuff like that, for more long-term self-sufficiency kind of thing. So.
Wow. So, I have a few more questions. This has been terrific. If people want to learn a skill right now, how would you? What recommendations are you saying? Learn how to cook, or prioritize, learn how to can, or no, learn some self-defense, or reconnaissance, scout out your environment. I guess if someone, is coming to you saying, hey, I want to learn a skill, not necessarily like I want to buy something, like I tell me which, hatchet to buy, which ham radio to buy, things like that. But they're like, I want to learn a skill, like a starting point. What's a good starting point for people, so that they don't get overwhelmed? It can be kind of, apply very quickly. We already kind of talked about fitness, but what would be something else?
People get overwhelmed because they never start, because they never actually do anything. They keep reading up on a subject and they keep reading and reading and reading, and they never actually do anything. So they feel really overwhelmed because there's a ton of information out there. So they feel like, well, I have to be the most prepared to start by reading all this stuff first. But then you start reading all this stuff, and then it just spirals your rabbit hole into rabbit hole into rabbit hole into rabbit hole. And then you just never do anything because you're like, well, I'll never be where this prepper's at, so why even bother, right? I actually hear that quite a bit. And so it's really unfortunate that people just get so inside their heads, with all this information that's out there. And so my advice, if you ever want to start any sort of skill, it doesn't really matter what it is. If it's just I want to learn how to sharpen a knife. Well, get a little bit of information, enough information to get you started, right? But then actually do something. Don't just read the information and do nothing with it, but read the information and then go try it. Even if you fail, who cares? Nobody cares. Okay. It's just the fact that you did it. You started. Right. And I have failed so many times with so many different things, but it's always made me more excited to learn how I can better to do it. When I first got started prepping, I was doing a lot of weird things, and so, but I just got started. It's like maybe it was weird to somebody else, but I also was just doing it. It's just like, we can't be perfect. And I think that's another thing that holds us back as well. Perfection. Everybody wants to be perfect. You want to be the perfect prepper, the perfect person to do this skill. I want to be perfect at this skill. But it's not going to happen. There's no such thing as perfect, especially with preparedness, because there's so many different ways to do things. And so, if you want to get started with a skill, then read up a little bit of information, watch some YouTube videos, whatever you got to do. And then put it on your calendar and just go, just do it. There's really nothing more to it. If you don't do it, then
you mentioned, so right there, learning how to sharpen a knife, right? That's, I remember, because I heat the house with firewood, right? So, got to keep the axes, sharp. But it was a skill. It was just trial and error, right? Until I kind of figured out how to do it. In the first few times, didn't turn out the best, right? Or like sharpening the blade on my lawnmower. I'm like, well, this can't be that hard back, in the early stages. And sometimes it's kind of weird because when we moved into this house back in 2002, there was a fair amount of work that needed to be done. And I would do things like I would build doors and things like for the house, and which are really, really nice. And like, I just did it back then because nobody told me I couldn't, and I didn't psych myself out of it, right? I'm like, how the hell do you build a door? That goes into what I've never built a door before. And I built this set of drawers out in my garage that pulls out and there's no mechanical mechanism. It's just with a little bit of paraffin wax to ease the friction. And these things are like magnificent. And then again, it's, as you said, it's a psychology of start somewhere. And, again, if, just like right there, sharpening a knife, it's someplace. If you're doing a garden, start somewhere, experiment, and you'll learn. You'll learn over time. So I want to, respectful of your time as we're talking about time, a question from the chat room, Bacon Maldito, our good friend from Inglewood, and this is toward the end here of our question set too. How about communications? So communication network, when you're hunkering down, he's asking, hey, should I consider a landline? You've demonstrated with your husband the use of ham radio and the success you've had with that. I think he in an episode he was saying he was able to talk to somebody in Canada on the ham radio from like the southern U.S. What do you think for communications? What should people who like Bacon are interested, want to know reliable communications? Because the cell phone, I don't know, maybe it's those networks aren't going to be reliable, and then also, of course, those systems could, well, I mean, they could be controlled and monitored and things like that. Just the reality. What do you suggest for making sure you're not isolated? You're getting information of what's happening from other people. So first, tell me, is it ham radio? Is there a landline? Is there a satellite phone? Is there some other method that you use?
Yeah, so there are a few options. I honestly think a landline is a really good idea, especially, if you can afford it, and why not, go for it. I really don't see anything wrong with a landline. But outside of that, a landline could be really good in emergencies because you could be a point of contact for other people as well. It's basically, I forgot the technical term for it, but basically, you could be a point of contact for someone in the sense of, well, I'll be your emergency command center, essentially. So if two families are getting separated or something, okay, one family calls you and says, hey, I'm at this location. Can you tell my mom when she calls in or whatever? Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Okay, bye. Mom calls in, hey, have you heard from so-and-so? Where are they? Hey, they're at blah, 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 blah. Great, done. Okay, so you're like that command center. Now you could also designate somebody else as a command center as well in the case of emergency. Now, payphones still exist.
Okay.
And I've always suggested that people should point out the payphones that are nearest to them. I had like 4 or 5 of them when I used to live in a urban area, and they all worked. And a lot of people say that the landlines, or I'm sorry, that the payphones work on cellular now, but I've confirmed with several people that it's still on the landline. So I'm not really sure kind of what's going on with that, but a payphone is an option, or if you have like a nearby business or something, like a gas station or something that might let you use their landline. A lot of businesses still have landlines these days, so they're an option as well. Just want to make sure that they actually have an actual landline and not like a VoIP or something like that, like an internet phone or anything like that. And then outside of that, ham. I love ham radio. I suggest ham radio all the time. It reaches far distances. I suggest that everybody get their ham license. And I know a lot of people have qualms with getting the license because they share your address publicly. And because you can look up every single ham and in the database. And they share your address publicly, and a lot of people don't like that. Just get a PO box, or whatever. You can use a PO box, as far as I know. We do, and so if it's that big of a problem, it is, which it is for us. I get that. Just use a PO box. Also, you will not learn as much about ham radio unless you actually get involved in it. I promise you this. We tried to get into ham radio by just listening to it before getting our license, and it was cool and all. We were able to, listen to a couple frequencies that got that kind of thing, but it was never, ever the experience that we had after our license. We got into a club. We did the yearly, I'm forgetting the name of it now, the disaster. Somebody help me out in the comments. I know one of you must know. The yearly, it's the, it'll come to me later.
Okay.
Anyway.
Joe Dolio, help us out.
The disaster training for hams. I can't remember it. We only did it once, like several years ago. We were only able to do it once, and then I think it was canceled this year when we wanted to go. Anyway, you will never learn as much about ham and how to use it and how to connect with people unless you actually get your license. And trust me when I tell you this. We're the before, now we're the after, and we know the difference. We are the difference. And so I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody to at least get their tech license. I have my tech. husband has this extra, and so we can get a variety of things going, variety of distances and frequencies and things like that. So you and even if you study the book or the test or whatever, you still will not learn as much as you will by actually doing it, by actually getting involved. Okay, all that stuff kind of just comes right together when you actually field day. That's it, field day. It's right there on the screen, field day. Oh,
got it. Thank you, Joe, for getting me the link to that.
Gosh. Yes, field day. Love field day. So fun. And every ham is so knowledgeable and so helpful. You will never find a ham that isn't more eager to help, because the ham community, it's not dying, but it's definitely something that a lot of people are not doing as much of anymore. And so the more people they can recruit, especially young people they can recruit, but of course, it's not just for young people. I'm just saying, but they always get very excited for the younger crowd. They're like, oh yeah,
right.
You're into ham, fantastic. When you go into ham clubs, it's a lot of older gentlemen, which is great. I went to a field day, and there were people who were doing Morse code. And I was just like, this is so cool, because you don't have to learn Morse code anymore for the tests. And when I wanted to do it like 20 years ago, you still had to do Morse code. And I never did it because you had to learn Morse code. I just didn't want to take that step. But anyway, yeah, I highly, highly suggest ham radio. And you can listen without a license. And I know that even during an emergency or disaster, you don't have to have your license in order to talk. But again, you just don't know what to do. You don't know how to reach out to people. You don't know how to communicate with this radio in your hand. You don't know the frequencies. You don't know these things without actually doing it and getting involved in it. And preferably, get involved with a club. They'll really, really help you out.
So to get trained in ham radio, I guess, how long does that take? And then like what a basic ham radio setup, what would that cost?
Gosh, ham can range anywhere. You can get the $35 bow things or however people say them, little handheld, little $35 ones, or it can all go up to thousands of dollars.
Right.
It just really, really depends on your budget. And what you want to do with it and stuff. We made like a little ham radio box, in which, portable box and things like that. Had all our stuff in it, and then it has the solar on the outside to charge it all together. It's very cool. But yeah, it just kind of depends, the antennas and masts and all these things, they all kind of add up. But ham is not a cheap hobby, let me tell you that. But you can get started with just and stick with just like a little handheld or something like that, with maybe like an extension antenna or something like that. And you could get very good range. Talk to your local community or something like that.
How about the course? I mean, how long did it take you to do the course?
So we took 1 week to study. We studied hard and fast for this, because we wanted to do it for so long, and we were like, we just have to do this. And so we put a date on the calendar for the exam. The exams are usually taken in person. I think they may be starting to do more online stuff. It just depends on where you live and the person putting it on. The big
thing is, like, don't freak out about it. Like, if this is something you're interested in, practice for it, get in with a network and learn it. And yeah, it's cool.
Yep. It is very cool. Very, very fun. Everybody's very encouraging and helpful.
I'm going to bring up the page here of per the recommendation of Joe in the chat, and right here is the American Redoubt Radio Operators Network, the American Preparedness Radio Network, TAPRN. Are you familiar with that, Morgan? Okay.
Absolutely.
So here's their website. So immediately, this is a network that you can get in communication. Be a part of, and bringing us, down to kind of the final question. How do you get reliable information? you did a show on this, also of making sure you have people that you can contact from around whether the country or United States. But who are you going to get reliable information, and how do you build your network? How do you say like, okay, this person I want in my network, or how do you say like, okay, this person, the stuff they're telling me of what they're observing, it's not accurate. It's information, so I'm going to take it, but it's not necessarily intelligence. Do you coach people in that? Do you have a network? Is someone in your network documenting, okay, this is happening right now at these 7 sites, like stores are requiring mask, or states just put in like mask orders, or playgrounds are all marked off with tape and off limits, or gas prices just dropped. I mean, all of these things that people observe. How did you build your network, and then how do you kind of vet and coach people in your network? And maybe if it's not even people, like, but here's like a source you go to, might be the Amron source to help inform you, because as you indicated earlier, I mean, if we're just focusing on here's what CNN is telling us, here's what the Epic News is telling us, Drudge.com, we're just going to go crazy, right? All of these things are going to drive us nuts because it's just information overload, and 99% of it is not only accurate, it's just very regional, almost local to like what a reporter picks up 5 miles away from a station. So I think people struggle with this a lot. So what would you right now, so I'm asking you the question, how do you make the network? How do you get your network of people to get you information?
Yeah, so it really does take a lot of trial and error, but basically it's a kind of about consistency. So if they're consistently giving you information that you can verify in some way, then they're probably a good source. Like a lot of links are being thrown out there all the time, right? Now, social media, I think, is actually a pretty good way to get information, but it's also a terrible way to get information. So you really have to go to multiple sources to try to figure this out, or either that or that source linked to some official source. And official could be whatever you find official. Like I think a lot of information and websites and agencies and things are very they're very personal to people. Like, a lot of people may listen to the FDA or the CDC or whatever, and then, or the WHO or whoever, and then other people are like, I don't listen to them or whatever, especially with this pandemic, it's been really, I think they've been taking a huge hit, because they've been very flip-floppy, with all this information. It's been
right.
very hard to keep up.
Right.
And so at a certain point, we have to take all the information that we gather, and then we have to come to a conclusion ourselves about what to do, or how to act, or, what actions to take, or whatever the case may be. And the media has unfortunately knows how to pull at our emotions, and knows how to fearmonger, and knows just the right wording and phrasing to get us all riled up and against each other, right? And so I think the biggest thing when it comes to information is to control our emotions, to gather as much information as we can from a variety of sources, and just try to put the pieces together as best as possible without letting our emotions just run wild.
Right there that's a terrific statement, because if you're not in the state of mind to process information, it doesn't really matter what information you get. I mean, because you're just going to be anxious, and if you remove that and objectively look at the information, then you're going to recognize the patterns. It's going to be much clearer. Hey, we have a question from Nick Schulaner, our good friend from Washington State. He's asking, there was the episode your husband was using HF bands to make a contact with Canada, or he's saying, did your husband use the HF bands to make the contact in Canada? There was a video where your husband was using the radio, or he was talking about it, and he said he communicated with some people in Canada. So not sure. You probably know Nick's lingo here better than I do.
yeah, it was during field day, and you know, we were using HF and a huge mast and an antenna and all that. So yeah, people, we were able to reach Canada that way, but the Morse code people, I think, were reaching people in like Germany and things, and like that was really cool. But anyway, yeah, field day is awesome. You get to reach all these people because everybody brings out their huge masts and antennas, and you're just like, this is so cool. Like there's just all these huge antennas everywhere. It's great. So yeah, we reach a whole bunch of people. But yeah, that was field day. We want to get a mast out here. You know, everything costs money, everything's time, everything's priority. So yeah, but that's definitely on our priority for sure.
Wow. So, you know, have you had anybody in your network, extended family, friends that has given you, I don't want to say bad intelligence, right? Bad intel, but maybe not informed. Maybe they've said to you, Morgan, this is what's happening. They are doing this and they are doing that. And if you go a step beyond that, what that person's really telling you is, I watched the news for 4 hours last night, and this is exactly what the news said. And now I am telling you that in a nutshell. Have anybody where you've needed to help them, and say, instead of this, tell me what you observed? If you can say, I observed. Okay, what did you do today? Well, I went to the store. Okay, what did you observe at the store? Or what did you observe when you were on the roads? I mean, so the roads were still open? Yeah, I guess roads are still open and still doing this. What did you observe? So have you had anybody close to you as a family member? I mean, obviously you don't have to identify the person, but somebody who has kind of hit this finite voltage, or has been taken in by you know, the media, and has just kind of lost their ability to be objective?
I definitely have a family member that it's very frustrating because they are very, very into their news, and they do not look outside sources or any other information. And so I've kind of stopped with that family member. At first, I kind of tried to have a conversation, and they really don't want anything of it. And so with those types of people, unfortunately, there's not much to really be done. But I also have the other spectrum in which, like, somebody might send me a link or something, and I'll be like, what is this? And I'll, you know, look at it, and I'll go research it, and then I'll get down to the actual facts of it. You know, I'll be like, well, what I'm seeing is this and that and the other, and then we'll have a conversation about it. You know, kind of like what you were saying about the observing. You know, what I'm observing from this other article is this, that, and the other. You know, what do you think? And then we'll have an actual conversation about it. So, you know, I think just the other day, somebody posted something, and I went and immediately, before I even reacted emotionally, you know, by leaving a comment, whatever, I went and researched it, and it had already been taken care of. I guess it was about some troll doll or something. They were outraged by this troll doll. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't really want to go into too many details, but there was this troll doll that was very offensive and disgusting, actually. And so they wanted it, you know, it was just a story that was talking about it. And so I investigated, and they had actually started taking it off the shelf. So then I posted that link. And so now that was a whole conversation. It was this person posted this link, and then I posted another link of something, you know, the action that was already taken, you know.
Sure.
So now a lot of people were very, you know, emotional about this. But it's about finding out, has any action been taken? What's going on with this? Is this real? What is this? You know, because some things you cannot believe it's real, right? So you have to look it up. So yeah, especially with politics. Don't believe any politician. Don't believe any politics.
Yeah. You know, it was amazing. I have a funny side, short funny side story, and then, you know, we'll get into wrap up here. My aunt and uncle moved into a house about 10 years ago in the northern part of the state. And when they passed, you know, we were cleaning, out the house and stuff. And I'm like, what's the deal with this big antenna that's on top of the garage? And then I like linked it all down, and there was like this whole ham radio network that I never knew existed. So I don't think that, I think it was there when they bought the house and they just kind of left it. And it was just the weirdest thing, because I'm like, if I would have known this was here, like I would have asked you questions like, what's the story behind this? And so, and I think what you've indicated too is there will be sometimes people will get to this finite voltage point, and you have to be careful of how much time you invest in them, to try to convince them, no, the border actually is open between Wisconsin and Illinois, that they're not stopping people and arresting you at the border. That's not happening. And find a dignified way to kind of walk away from that, saying, we have different sets of information we're working from. I don't have that information. I'm not getting that through my network of people, but thanks, for sharing that with me, and to move on. Wow. So Morgan, as we close, where bringing out the crystal ball here, where do you see things between, I guess, now and election, and maybe what are some things, if people should watch for, things that could be happening in stores, things that could be happening through government mandates, things that they can do? Because I think a consensus is like November is going to be bad. Like the election, no matter who wins the election, it just is. There's a probability of these riots repeating, in cities and things like that. I know some people who have had places destroyed in the riots, and they said, we're not doing anything until after the election, because we're not going to rebuild and likely have something. So, where do you think things are heading, and how one or two things people should think about from a preparedness aspect?
I'm not really kind of big on predictions. I'm really big on action. And so the only actions, on things that I can control. And so what I can control and what I can do is keep prepping. I can keep going, and I can keep getting those couple extra cans of food. I can keep getting those couple extra bottles of water. I can keep collecting rainwater. I can keep working on my garden. I can keep learning new skills. I can keep gathering intel, and I can keep training, and I can keep doing all these things. Because I think no matter what, the more self-sufficient and the more skills that we know, and the better prepared we are to be able to handle whatever, whether it's ghosts or aliens or
Right.
a politician we don't agree with, winning the election, whatever the case may be, we'll be mentally, physically, emotionally better prepared to handle this stuff if we just try to stay focused on trying to better ourselves and better our community, and better those around us, and just try to just be the best prepared that we all can possibly be. I mean, that's really the best advice that I have.
Morgan, I'm going to bring up your website, and I'm going to have you just introduce. I won't go through all of it, but just introduce people. This is the website, roguepreparedness.com. What will people find when they visit your website?
So I have a lot of free stuff, a lot of free content, some challenges, and I have some online courses. I have some ebooks on there. I have, checklists. I have a lot of free checklists that people can download. And then I have a newsletter. If people want to subscribe, you get a free ebook about how to cook with your food storage. And then I think, well, there's just a lot of content on there right now.
Management does, are there other people? This is an extensive, very well assembled, site. This is really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing a 31-day Rogues 31 Days to Readiness challenge on my blog, where I post a blog every day just to kind of give a little snippet of something to do for that day, or to get you thinking, or something like that. So that's what I'm doing in this month. Just little things instead of big extensive blog posts, just little quick little snippets of things people can do. So
Over here on the right-hand side, it says chat with Rogue Preparedness. So people can just come in here and start a chat, like ask questions about the site or what is that?
Yeah, that's just a open chat. If anybody, I think it's connected to Facebook.
Yes.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not sure how that got on my site.
Okay. I don't know how any of this is there.
I think my husband sometimes tinkers with my website. All of a sudden, somebody was asking me a question one day, and I'm like, and it didn't come from Facebook or whatever. And I was like, where did this come from? And I went to my website. I was like, what is this? Anyway, I think my husband may have added it there, but I like it. You know, it's as long as you have Facebook, you can always. And then I'm on every platform, so I'm reachable everywhere. And you know, it may take me a little bit to get back to you, like through email or whatever, but you know, like it took me a little bit to get back to you, you know, but I always get back to people, even if it's a week or two later. So just always try to be patient with me.
Wow, Morgan, this is, I mean, yeah, people can check it out. It's very well put together. And coming back to what I said at the start of the show, it's an easement, right? It's a way in for people, whether they're totally new to this. And this is another point, like, you know, people can't feel that, oh my God, because I haven't done enough, it's too late to do anything. Like, no, you can start today. And you again, more you sprout, you know, when you're shopping, if there are extra cans available or, you know, extra pasta available, you know, pick some up, start to expand out your pantry, work on your own skill set. Hey, sharpening a knife. Can I start growing some stuff in a container, growing at home? And you're looking, and these aren't expensive things. I mean, you're investing in your own, you know, skill sets, and it makes sense. And, you know, you give so much opportunity for people just from your website. And I love that we talked about the ham radio aspect, because I hadn't thought about that. When I grew up with CB radios, right? Yeah. A CB radio in my car, and you know, that was the thing. But
it's a whole new world with ham. Let me tell you, we were CB too, and we were like, whatever, CB's fine. And then we got into ham. We were like, whoa, CB's not fine at all.
Right, man. That was it was crazy. I lived 2 blocks from a cheese factory where I grew up, small town. And I had a CB radio, like a little home base in my house, and I could talk to the truck drivers that would come in, because this cheese factory was pretty busy. So that was always a cool thing of you know, when they would come by. And but yeah, so as you indicated, ham radio, you know, is a way. And I know this, you know, through the Chernobyl you know, research that I've done, the people I've talked to, you know, Pripyat, Kiev, Poland, Sweden, Eastern Bloc. Ham radio was a huge source of information, kind of like a Samizdat type of thing, where they did the underground newspapers. It was a way to get information, and people had a high value in what was coming out of ham radio back then. And I think to this day too. So there's a term in research called stochastic. So stochastic means that you have a varied sample, right? So if I'm going to ask, you know, 5 people how they're doing today, I'm not going to ask 5 people who just won, you know, something at a lottery and are redeeming their tickets to get their money. How are you doing today? I'm doing pretty damn great because I just won the lottery. I'm going to ask 5 people, you know, all over sample. So stochastic, right? So if you have ham radio, that means you're talking to people at different ages, in different geographic locations, who have different government, you know, things that are impacting them. I mean, so, you know, if you're in Michigan, as Joe had posted in the chat, there's a limitation on buying seeds. So, you know, you get information from people from different areas. It is this natural variable part. Now, the benefit of that is your information is more likely to be accurate when you have a broad sample of information versus just a small network and people who probably experience the same stores that you go to, you know, the same streets that you walk on and things like that. So this is really cool that you shared this. Everything on your site, just your work, I'm a big fan. I thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. The questions, you know, spot on. We've really advanced this discussion. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thrilled to learn. And in closing, Morgan yesterday had a video that she posted about planting rice, and this whole process. You take containers, and then she was going through and how, you put so much water in, and you put soil down, and then you put rice on top, and then you put a couple inches of water above. But what happened is the water went down below, and then the soil raised up. And she did one container and said, well, wait and see how this one turns out. And I was watching, I'm like, this is actually great, because you could have just cut that out, right? You could have just waited until, whatever happened, and then produce a video that was all showing, here's exactly a thing. But you're showing, you're telling people, experiment, like, be vulnerable on this. And it's rice and dirt and water, right? If it doesn't turn out, it doesn't, but I'm going to learn that. I'm going to learn something different from this. And I love that you do that. You're so authentic on what you share, and you're just very smart on this, very connected to you. So Morgan, in sharing with people, how can they find out, I'll have the website, but find out about you. You post many YouTube videos. I've got a number of them over here on the side. I recommend. I watch these. I go through these. How can people learn more about you and more about your work?
Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. If you just put road preparedness, you'll find me. But I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, obviously. And yeah, I'm pretty active everywhere. I mainly just post links on Facebook, but you can reach out to me pretty much everywhere, and I'll, email. It really doesn't matter. I'm cool with wherever. So yeah, I really appreciate the engagement. I love these live shows and the live comments and talking to people and getting that back and forth. And of course, the host is good too, I guess.
Oh my goodness. Morgan, I had so much fun doing the show trailer for this. So I took a little clip from Sigourney Weaver in the movie Aliens. And if you haven't seen it, just go on Twitter and under Safety PhD, and you can find it's like 50 seconds long. And I did a little just a little spoof, right, of a trailer, which I started to do now for shows, and I had fun with it. But it was so it was so funny, because actually I'm a pretty serious person. So when people see that and they've only seen me present in context, it's kind of oh my goodness, I didn't know there was a side. But after watching, I was like, okay, Morgan will be all right with this. Oh, so yeah. She's not going to cancel out on the show here because we have a little fun intro video to it. But well, hey, thank you so much, Morgan. I hope that we'll do a check-in at some point down the road to kind of see what's different, what you've observed, how things have changed. You've helped us so much on member checking, things that were difficult to find once the pandemic, once the closure started, like sewing machines. Who's going to think about that? Going through the where are the bikes? The bikes are all gone. Skills that people can learn. Hey, do you know how to sharpen a knife? No. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to get the materials, a couple dollars, and boom, you can get all of your knives sharpened. That's a skill that you can learn. Try it, learn it. So just wonderful advice. So wishing you the best. Keep putting out such incredible content. Keep being a value-added person. I appreciate it. People that I know that I've made them aware of your content, they very much appreciate that too. So Morgan Rogue was with us here on the Safety Doc podcast. A shout out to our good friends in Los Angeles, the city of angels, Los Angeles, the 405media.com, John Grant out of LA, syndicating this show 5 days a week. Also the Spark Radio Network out of Pennsylvania. Spark Radio, sparking up, at least when the power is on. It wasn't for 32 hours where Spark Radio was at, but hey, you can find Spark Radio. SafetyPhD.com, that's where you'll find everything Safety Doc related. And good news here with the Safety Doc, there is the new book that will be coming out, The Velocity of Information. Very thrilled about that, working on an audio version for that also. So The Velocity of Information. So stay safe, everybody, and thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for having me on. Really loved it.
Great. I appreciate it. I had a great time, too.
Thanks.